was appointed as the new superintendent in 1987. And at the time, the district had about 4,000 students, and we were growing very rapidly. And I was a very young, very inexperienced superintendent, and went through a period of time where things kind of went up and down, and got to a point where our Board of Trustees, to their credit, said, we want to know what's new in education. We want to know how we can improve, what we can do to get better, and we want you to take a little time and go and look around the United States, go to some conferences, go find out how we can get better, because things were not all that good in this district. I mean, our test scores were fine, and we were doing okay, but we had a Board of Trustees and a community, I think, that wanted us to get much, much better. One of the conferences I went to was a American Association of School Administrators conference in San Diego, I believe. And it was about quality in education. It was put on by a school district in Minnesota that was using Deming's philosophy to improve education. They were working with a company by the name of 3M. They were helping them. And I got all excited and thought that really was something that we could do and help us to improve. So I came back to the district and went back to work and got busy with other things and promptly forgot about it. I think I talked with Monta and Anita and some of the other people in our office about it, and then pretty much as you get back into the groove of things and stuff keeps coming at you, then you tend to kind of let those things go by the wayside. Well, several months later, Monta came in and talked to me and had seen something on the public broadcasting system. I forget the name of it, but she had seen David Langford.
I couldn't sleep, and I turned on PBS hoping to get some nature show that would lull me to sleep. And instead, what I caught was the last few minutes of Quality or Else, and saw David Langford for the first time. And we had been working so hard to improve the current systems, and there was something about that 10-minute clip that said, this man's onto something. This man has knowledge that we need if we're truly going to make a difference in education. So I began seeking out David to see if he was available, and it just so happened that very shortly after that he was going to have a 2-day conference in Dallas. I think it was one of his very first consulting conferences. And then from there, we began taking staff and having David come in. So he was that night, and working with David was a huge catalyst for change, for realizing that we were trying to improve the current system and improving things that were never going to get us to the place we wanted to go in terms of student learning, in terms of student ownership, in terms of truly making a difference in students' lives.
He had a message that we thought might have some meaning for us. And so we took a very small group to a 4-day with David Langford, and from that, a few months later, we took a group of 40. It was all of our campus principals, some of our secondary department heads, some central office people, and went through a 4-day.
We knew the first thing that we had to do was to learn. And we had to get more information, and truly, I know that the term paradigm shift has become very trite, but it was shaking us to the very core of what it is that we need to address as an educational system. So in addition to, we took 40 people, the very first session that we went to, which included teachers and administrators as well as support people. And I think that was key from the beginning, that we saw this as a whole district approach, that this was not limited to just administration or just teachers or in fact just the educational part of the district. I think that was key.
And when you go through a 4-day in the beginning, there are some moments of great frustration. And I can remember one of our, she was, I think, the science department head at the time. And I can remember her sitting there and looking at David, arms folded. And then she took her pencil and she threw it down and said, "So what you're saying is everything we've been doing is wrong." Because that is a way that you begin to process what continuous improvement is. That you have to really look at what you're doing and then find a way to do it better. And that's a hard self-reflection, group reflection to have. And all of us at one point or another had that exact same feeling. This person just was brave enough to say it out loud.
I think my comment to people at the time in kind of public speaking engagements was, I'm not going to force you to do what David is telling us we need to do. But the non-negotiable is we are going to improve. We are going to get better. Here is a way that we can do that, that's tried and true in the business world. And it's something that I think can affect education and help us to improve. So we did that over that year, and we had a lot of converts. Well, not a lot, but we had a significant number of people who really took it on. And then we had another significant number of people who really believed that this was either frivolous or damaging or was not going to work. It was going to harm the way we worked with students. They were very much clinging to what they knew and how they did things, and wanted to keep doing it just like they did. So we had, two camps of people, and a big group of people in the middle who just said, leave me alone. I'll go on and do what I want to do, and y'all go on and figure out what you want to do.
One of the very first things we did, again, is we were muddling through and figuring out, well, what should we do next? We know that we want to implement this philosophy. We can tell there's something important here. As we began to read, and when Deming went to Japan, he started with a systems diagram, a very simple systems diagram. And so I said, well, that's good enough. Let's start with the systems diagram. So we looked at it, had a small, at that time the administrative staff was quite small, and struggled with translating what does that look like for education. And we then used a PDSA to say, okay, if that's our perfect system, and we had a very simplistic system diagram, then what are all the barriers to making that flow smoothly? And from that we came up, and this was in about 94, I believe, we came up with, I'd say, 12 different processes that needed significant improvement. And as we could resource them in terms of people's time as well as other resources, we began to get appropriate stakeholders together to develop those PDSAs. And they had such success, people began to see how they could be, the use of the tools, the use of the Plan, Do, Steady, Act would help them in their situation, whatever problems they were facing.
When we started this journey into continuous improvement, we really didn't know where to start. And we kept asking David Langford, where do we start? And he said, somewhere. And so we just jumped in and started by saying, okay, the first thing we have to do is realize that it is a journey. And that is a huge step to take because you have no idea. You can say the words, okay, we know we're on a journey, and we know we have a lot of learning to do, and then we kind of stop and say, are we there yet? And until you realize that you're not going to get there, that you're just going to keep going and learning and improving and continuing the process, at that point in time, you know, and you can look back and you can say, all right, it's worth it.
I used to, and still do, but keep huge stacks of books on my desk. And when I was keeping, when I would have a conversation with somebody, then instead of we're all going to study this book and we're all going to learn about it, then it would be, here, take this book, see if this speaks to you right there where you are in your learning. So it was a rather chaotic approach in some ways, but I think it was very effective in terms of freeing everybody to learn and freeing everybody to improve. Looking back, it seems a little silly, but I think, in fact, I've been told that some people said it was almost like they were sitting around waiting for permission to improve, that improvement was something that was not located within each person. So I think that one of the first things that we had to do was to empower each person to look at their own area and say, you know, what issues do I have? What do I need to improve, and what resources do I need to do that? I think a huge shift, and looking back now it seems silly, but it was in the questions we began to ask ourselves. And the first time that we gave ourselves permission to ask, how can we do that better? How can you improve that? And how do you know? So looking at the data piece as well as just the whole focus on continuous improvement. At first, when you ask people, how can you improve things, then they think that what they're doing is not good. And now I think it's just a natural part of our culture. We would never be satisfied with what is. I think that we naturally ask ourselves, we're here, but we can get better. And the same thing with how do you know? We gave ourselves permission as a group to say, ask each other, how do you know? Ask each other, how can we make this better? Until it became a part of our normal dialogue, and until it became a part of the culture. Then when you began asking different questions, then it changes the conversation. I think those questions that you ask, that you continually put in front of you, are key to making a transformation.